3 years of marriage and our home had been run exactly like a corporation, under the strict rules set by Ethan Vance. From maintaining a professional family image to our daily meals, clothes, and schedule, there was no exception. You went out shopping today without submitting a time-off request? I'll have to mark you as absent. A day's worth of your allowance is deducted. He tapped away on his laptop, logging my behavior for the day. Dressed in a crisp, tailored suit, he didn't show a single hint of exhaustion from a long day at the office. But my mind was stuck on the scene I had witnessed earlier today. Chloe Miller had been looking up at the man beside her, chatting happily. The man in the suit held a shopping bag in one hand while wrapping his other arm tightly around her waist. That man was my husband, Ethan. Ethan closed his laptop, walked over, and wrapped his arms around me naturally. Why didn't you sign the check-in sheet at the front door? You know I'll have to dock your pay for that. I forced a weak smile and quietly pushed him away. Sure. Deduct it. Ethan had no idea that his probation period in my heart had just expired. Earlier today, I did something rare. I didn't report my schedule to Ethan. Instead, I took my best friend, Harper Brooks, to the luxury mall downtown. His birthday was coming up. I wanted to buy him a navy blue bow tie. Why don't we check out some other stores? Harper suddenly blocked my path, her eyes darting around in panic. What's wrong? You just said this bow tie was the best one here. Plus, we've already walked through the whole mall. I laughed, grabbing her hand to walk forward. But the moment I looked ahead, I froze. A woman was holding her phone, laughing beautifully. The man beside her held her hand tightly, leaning down to listen to her. The warmth and indulgence in his eyes were practically overflowing. The two of them looked like they were bound by an invisible, romantic thread, completely shut off from the rest of the world. I couldn't believe my eyes. Just a few hours ago, Ethan had sent me a picture of himself working at his desk. He had even ordered a bouquet of roses to be delivered to me. The card read, "A little surprise for today." I hid behind a marble pillar, my fingers trembling as I sent Ethan a message on Snapchat. Ethan, are you at work? A minute passed. No reply. Usually, he replied within seconds. The woman clung to his arm like a delicate doll, swaying gently and speaking in a sweet, soft voice. Ethan, look. That puppy is so cute. Can we get one? You go home so late every day, and that big apartment gets so lonely. I want a dog to keep me company. Under the warm mall lights, the tiny dark mole near the corner of his eye was clearly visible. I loved that mole. Whenever we were in bed, he would use it to tease and seduce me. I gripped my phone so hard my knuckles turned white. His deep voice drifted over, filled with a tenderness he rarely showed me. Chloe, how many times have you asked for a pet? You lose interest in 3 minutes. I'm not cleaning up your mess. Besides, we're in the office together every day. Isn't my company enough for you? Chloe blushed, trying to pull her hand away, but Ethan grabbed it back and held it tighter. All right. I promise we can get one. The woman was his assistant, Chloe Miller. I leaned against the pillar, feeling all the strength drain from my body. My heart felt like it was being violently squeezed. It hurt so much I couldn't breathe. Ethan had always hated pets. I had once asked him if we could get a puppy. He had smiled gently, kissing my forehead. Having you is enough for me. Where would I get the energy to care for a pet? Besides, I'm allergic. It turned out he wasn't allergic at all. He just didn't want to raise one with me. He had plenty of energy for someone else. By the way, Ethan, I think your wife went out today, Chloe murmured. Ethan frowned. Did she not submit a request to you? Chloe shook her head. That won't do, Ethan said coldly. Mark it as an unexcused absence. She needs to learn her lesson. Listening to them, my tears finally spilled over. I ended up letting out a bitter, silent laugh. So, the lightning-fast replies I used to get were actually sent by Chloe. He had completely handed his phone over to her. Even Chloe knew all about our ridiculous household rules. My phone screen remained dark. Ethan's reply never came. By the time I got home from the mall, it was late at night. I washed my face, but my eyes were still swollen and red. When I pushed the door open, Ethan was sitting on the sofa, giving me a probing look. Where did you go today? You didn't even sign the check-in sheet. And I was too busy this afternoon to reply to your message. My lips twitched. I wanted to confront him right then and there, but the words died in my throat. It felt completely pointless now. It's fine. Deduct my pay, I said dryly. Honestly, this marriage was no longer worth saving anyway. He froze for a second, then reached out to play with my hair affectionately. You promised me you'd follow the rules. We've only been married for 3 years. Are you giving up already? I flinched and ducked away from his touch. Ethan's brow furrowed, and his voice dropped. Rhiannon, my patience is limited. If you keep acting like this, your allowance is gone. For 3 years, as a typical housewife, I had lived on his measly $300 monthly allowance. This money was barely a fraction of the interest sitting in my personal bank accounts. Seeing my silence, his tone grew even colder. You agreed to these terms yourself. If you acted like this in my company, you'd be fired for insubordination. I'll give you 3 seconds to explain why you went out without submitting a request. 3, 2, 1. As he counted down, his face grew darker by the second. But I remained silent. I'll give you one more chance. 10 seconds. If this were before, I would have immediately rushed into his arms, begging for his forgiveness for my little mistake. But now, I just found it hilarious. I looked at him and asked, "Where were you this afternoon, Ethan?" A flash of panic crossed his eyes, but he quickly recovered his composure. "Where else would I be? The office, of course." Stop suffocating me. Can you give me some space? Besides, I'm working hard to support this family. Why can't you be more understanding, like Chloe? My heart sank into a cold abyss. Understanding? My throat burned with unshed tears. Had I not been understanding enough? During our 3 years of marriage, because he was an extreme perfectionist who insisted on corporate structure at home to set a good example, I let him run our house like a business. To maintain his perfect family image, I changed my entire wardrobe. I stopped wearing comfortable, casual clothes. Our entire life revolved around his work schedule. I had to sign in when I woke up and sign out when I went to sleep. If I failed, he docked my money. I even had to submit a sick leave request when I was ill, and I wasn't allowed to invite friends over without his written permission. Our home had become a subsidiary of his company. And I, his wife, was nothing but an unpaid employee. Thinking about it now, I was a complete joke. Ethan, let's get a divorce. You can live however you want, and sleep with Chloe however you want. I'm done. At the mention of Chloe, his eyes flickered, but then rage took over. Rhiannon, what nonsense are you talking about? She's just my assistant. We are completely professional. Just because I docked your allowance, you're using this to threaten me? Don't come crying back to me later. I'll pretend I didn't hear that. Just this once. Don't let it happen again. With that, he grabbed his laptop and stormed out. I didn't care where he went. I was just exhausted. I wanted to sleep. Before closing my eyes, I sent a Snapchat message to my grandfather. I lost. I'll marry Julian. My grandfather replied with just one line. Meet Julian Sterling tomorrow. Julian was the man my grandfather had chosen for me years ago. He was stable, successful, and still single. I didn't know when I finally fell asleep. The next morning, a vibrating notification woke me up. It was a text from Ethan. Come to the office. Perfect. He needed to sign the divorce papers anyway, and I could meet Julian nearby right after. Because Ethan was obsessed with boundaries, he rarely let me visit Vance Enterprises. As a result, I was stopped right at the front desk. I'm Ethan's wife. If you don't believe me, you can call his assistant. The receptionist sneered at me. Ma'am, even if you claim to be Mr. Vance's wife, you need an appointment. Look at yourself. In this company, everyone knows Chloe is Mr. Vance's true partner. I checked the time. If I didn't get in now, I'd be late to meet Julian. I brushed past the receptionist and ran toward the elevators. I'll explain everything to Ethan myself. I called out. But before I could reach the elevator, 2 security guards blocked my way. Ma'am, if you don't have an appointment, we will throw you out. Looking at the hostility in their eyes, I realized that the company I had helped Ethan build was now completely foreign to me. The receptionist, the guards, even the keycard scanners, nothing was familiar anymore. Sighing, I called Ethan. It rang for a long time, but no one answered. The guard's expression hardened, and he grabbed my arm, violently dragging me toward the glass doors. Acting all classy, but you're just another crazy stalker. Get out. A woman like you isn't in Mr. Vance's league. Don't make me call the cops. He threw me onto the concrete sidewalk. I scraped my palms, skin peeling back painfully. I'm not. I tried to argue, but then the lobby doors opened. Ethan was walking out, surrounded by several high-profile clients. Chloe, wearing a tight, elegant skirt, was walking right beside him, delicately adjusting his tie. One of the clients laughed. Mr. Vance, Chloe is so attentive. I'm jealous. Exactly. Unlike my wife at home, who only knows how to complain and has no idea how hard I work. Chloe blushed, her voice dripping with mock modesty. Oh, stop it. It's just my job. Besides, Mrs. Vance is always busy shopping and relaxing, so I'm happy to help. If your wives heard you, they'd be heartbroken. Another client chuckled. So what if they hear? If we didn't pay for their lifestyles, they wouldn't have such a cozy life. That's just how it is in our circle. He lowered his voice, asking Ethan, so, did your wife throw a tantrum? It's been 3 years. Has she really never complained about your house rules? When you first brought up the idea of running your home like a corporation, we thought it was a joke. I didn't expect you to actually do it. If it works, maybe I should start docking my wife's card too. My voice caught in my throat. Ethan stayed silent for a moment, then let out a low laugh. Of course she didn't complain. Rhiannon loves me too much to ever refuse. As for whether it works, well, you can see the results. The men shared a knowing, arrogant laugh. I didn't stay on the ground. I stood up, brushing the dirt off my knees. Ethan Vance. The group turned around instantly. Their smiles froze. Ethan's face went completely pale, his smug expression vanishing. Ree? What are you doing here? He rushed over to me, his brow furrowed. Why did you come to the office without letting me know? Is this how a supportive wife behaves? I've been too lenient with you, and now you think you can just show up whenever you want. Your allowance for the next month is gone. I didn't argue. I just handed him a stack of papers. The divorce agreement was tucked right in the middle of his check-in sheets. He didn't even look at them. He just quickly scribbled his signature on the bottom line, thinking it was just more household paperwork. Once I had the signed document back in my hands, I looked at him calmly. Go ahead. Deduct it. My calm demeanor made Ethan uneasy. He snapped, trying to mask his guilt with anger. It was just a joke between guys. Can you be a little more mature? Besides, you heard them. Having a beautiful assistant by your side is completely normal in our circle. Before I could speak, Chloe grabbed my sleeve, tears instantly streaming down her face. Mrs. Vance, it's all my fault. Please don't blame Ethan. If I hadn't tempted him, he wouldn't have done this. I frowned, completely baffled by her sudden waterworks. I hadn't even said anything to her. I just came to. Suddenly, Chloe dropped to her knees, sobbing loudly. Mrs. Vance, please forgive Ethan. I don't want your place. I just want to stay by his side and support him. Please don't fire me. The onlookers stared at me with pure disgust, murmuring about how heartless I was. I tried to pull my sleeve out of her grip. But before I could even apply any force, Chloe shrieked. She threw herself backward, rolling down the short flight of concrete steps. Her forehead struck the sharp edge of the stone tile with a loud thud. Blood immediately pooled from her hairline, dripping down her face. It hurts so much. She clutched her head, curling into a ball. Ethan, my face, am I disfigured? Before I could process what had happened, Ethan violently shoved me aside, screaming at me. Rhiannon, are you insane? Chloe just wanted to work. How could you push her? I stared at him in disbelief. Ethan, are you blind? I didn't touch her. You all cornered me and accused me of things I didn't do. How is this my fault? Ethan was shaking with rage. You are completely out of control, Rhiannon. Your allowance for the rest of the year is docked. I'm not coming home tonight. Stay there and think about what you've done. With that, he scooped Chloe into his arms and rushed her to his car. The engine roared and the car sped away, leaving me alone on the street. The scrapes on my palms stung sharply in the wind, making me tremble. I let out a self-deprecating laugh. Look at this, Rhi, I told myself. This is the man you defied your grandfather to marry. This is the toxic, abnormal marriage you endured. But it was fine. This unbalanced relationship was finally over. I walked into the Starbucks next door. Julian Sterling was already waiting for me. The moment I sat down, his eyes fell on my bleeding palms. He frowned instantly and called the barista over to get a first aid kit. Watching this handsome, powerful man carefully clean and bandage my scratches, I smiled bitterly. Grandpa, your judgment was always better than mine. Just like Ethan's probation period. I had given him 3 years to prove himself. He failed. So, it was time for me to start a new chapter. At the hospital, Ethan knew deep down that Chloe had faked the fall. But he couldn't let me challenge his authority. In his mind, rules were rules and they couldn't be broken. He stared at his phone, feeling a strange, hollow anxiety creeping in. He sent me a WhatsApp message. Do you understand what you did wrong now? I didn't reply. 3 hours passed. Still no response. Ethan's heart began to race. A weird feeling of losing control washed over him. Suddenly, a breaking news notification popped up on his phone. Julian Sterling, heir of the Sterling Group, announces his engagement to Rhiannon Shaw, heiress of the Shaw Empire, on March 18th. The notification glowed on my phone screen, but I didn't swipe to open it. I didn't need to. Across the low mahogany table at the quiet cafe, Julian Sterling set down his silver fountain pen. He had just finished making a few handwritten notes on a set of merger drafts for his own board. His long, capable fingers were steady, his expression serene. When he looked up at me, there was no condescension in his eyes, no calculated assessment of my worth, and certainly no attempt to quantify my presence into a spreadsheet. The press release went out 5 minutes ago, Rhiannon, Julian said softly, pushing a cup of warm chamomile tea toward me. Your grandfather personally verified the wire. By tomorrow morning, the entire financial district will know. I looked down at my hands. Julian had wrapped my scraped palms with clean, sterile gauze, applying the soothing ointment himself with gentle, unhurried precision. For 3 years, if I so much as chipped a nail while scrubbing Ethan's baseboards to meet his impossible cleanliness standards, I was docked a percentage of my allowance for negligence of personal presentation. Yet here was the future head of the Sterling Group, holding my hands as if they were made of priceless glass, caring only about my pain. Thank you, Julian, I murmured, my voice steady for the first time in months. And I'm sorry for involving you in this mess. Julian leaned back, a soft, rare smile touching the corners of his lips. Involving me? I've waited 4 years for you to realize that Ethan Vance was a pebble in your shoe. You didn't involve me. You simply stopped letting a fool hold you back from where you belong. My phone on the table began to buzz. Ethan Vance calling. It buzzed again. And again. Then came a barrage of WhatsApp messages, the notifications stacking up like panicked heartbeats. What is the meaning of this news alert? Is this some sick joke? Answer your phone right now. Who the hell is Julian Sterling? Why is your name linked with the Shaw Group? Rhiannon, stop playing games. You went way too far this time. I am docking your entire year's allowance. Do you hear me? Answer me. I looked at the flashing screen, feeling a strange, intoxicating sense of emptiness. The fear, the desperate urge to apologize, the anxious knot in my stomach that had tightened every evening at 6 p.m. when I waited for his car to pull into the driveway, it was all gone. Dissolved like mist under the morning sun. I picked up the phone. I didn't answer the call. Instead, I opened Snapchat, tapped on Ethan's contact, and typed one final message. Your 3-year probation period for being my husband has expired. Performance review, failed. Contract terminated without severance. Then I hit block. On Snapchat, WhatsApp, text, and calls. I wiped him from my device as cleanly as one would delete a corrupted file. Ready to go home? Julian asked quietly. I looked at him, feeling the heavy iron collar around my neck finally snap open. Yes, I said. Take me home to grandfather. Part 2. The Ghost in the Office. Ethan Vance stood in the VIP room of the private hospital, holding his phone against his ear. The number you have dialed is currently unavailable. He pulled the phone away, staring at the screen in utter disbelief. He called again. Same automated voice. He tried WhatsApp. A single gray checkmark. He opened Snapchat. User not found. Ethan, my head hurts so much, Chloe whimpered from the hospital bed, a small bandage resting neatly over her temple. The doctor said I might have a mild concussion. Do you think your wife will come back to apologize? She was so mean to me. Ethan didn't hear her. His mind was racing, spinning out of control like gears stripped of their teeth. Shaw Empire? Heiress of the Shaw Group? That was impossible. Rhiannon was an orphan, or so he had assumed. When he met her 3 years ago, she was quiet, soft-spoken, and dressed in simple, unbranded clothes. She had willingly signed his domestic partnership agreement, agreeing to his strict rules, his corporate structure, and his $300 monthly allowance, without batting an eye. He had taken her obedience as proof of her absolute devotion, proof that she was a blank canvas he could mold into the perfect executive wife. How could she be related to Arthur Shaw, the ruthless titan who controlled half the commercial real estate and shipping lanes in the country? Suddenly, Ethan's brain short-circuited. He remembered the stacks of paperwork he had offhandedly signed in the company lobby just hours ago, the papers Rhiannon had tucked inside his daily check-in sheets. His heart plummeted into his stomach. Ethan? Chloe reached out to touch his arm. Where are you going? Shut up for a second, Chloe. Ethan snapped, shoving his phone into his suit jacket. His voice was sharper than it had ever been with her. Chloe gasped, recoiling as if struck. Ethan? You're yelling at me. I have to go to the office, he muttered, his face pale, cold sweat breaking out across his forehead. Stay here. The driver will pick you up. Without waiting for her reply, Ethan sprinted out of the hospital room, leaving Chloe sitting in stunned silence. When Ethan smashed through the glass doors of Vance Enterprises, the night shift security guards scrambled to stand at attention. He ignored them, rushing straight to his top-floor executive suite. He ripped open his desk drawers, searching frantically for the clipboard he had signed earlier. He found it resting right next to his laptop. He flipped through the check-in forms until his fingers hit the crisp, heavy parchment hidden underneath. It wasn't household paperwork. It was a binding, unilateral divorce and asset separation agreement, executed under the jurisdiction of the Shaw Family Trust's legal firm. Ethan's eyes scanned the lines frantically, his heart hammering against his ribs. Article 4. The signatory, Ethan Vance, hereby acknowledges that all financial assets, operational capital, and equity lines extended to Vance Enterprises under Project Horizon were directly underwritten by Shaw Global Investments. Article 7. Upon signature, the signatory unconditionally forfeits all claims to spousal maintenance, community property, and business subsidies granted during the 3-year trial period. Signed, Ethan Vance. No, 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 no. Ethan roared, slamming his fist onto the mahogany desk. This is fraud. She tricked me. He snatched up his desk phone and dialed his chief legal counsel, screaming into the receiver before the man could even say hello. David, get over here right now. My wife, Rhiannon, she gave me papers to sign under false pretenses. Cancel the divorce. Void the contract. There was a long, uncomfortable silence on the other end of the line. Ethan. David's voice was hesitant, laced with a pity that made Ethan's blood run cold. Where are you right now? In my office. Where else? Ethan, check your corporate email. We received a formal notice from the legal team at Shaw Global 20 minutes ago. David swallowed hard. They aren't just filing the divorce decree, which, by the way, is legally sound because you signed every page in full context. They've also terminated the $50 million line of credit that was keeping Vance Enterprises afloat for our Q4 expansion. Ethan felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. What credit line? Vance Enterprises is self-made. I built this company with my own grit and corporate discipline. Ethan, be realistic. David barked, losing his professional composure. Did you really think a 3-year-old startup could land Tier 1 government contracts and secure downtown high-rise leases on your discipline alone? The Shaw Group backed every single loan we took. They were your shadow guarantors. Without them, our creditors will freeze our accounts by tomorrow morning. The phone slipped from Ethan's numb fingers, crashing onto the carpet. He stumbled backward, sinking into his leather chair. The silence of the office closed in on him, heavy and suffocating. Vance Enterprises hadn't been built by his genius. It had been built on a golden pedestal provided by the quiet, obedient woman who sat at home every night, waiting for him to permit her to eat dinner. Part 3. The Return of the Princess. While Ethan's world was crumbling into dust, I was sitting in the grand drawing room of the Shaw Manor, wrapped in a soft cashmere blanket. The fireplace crackled warmly, throwing golden light across the polished oak floors. My grandfather, Arthur Shaw, sat across from me in his wingback chair, sipping a glass of aged scotch. Julian sat beside me, quietly peeling an apple and placing the precise, elegant slices on a small porcelain plate for me. 3 years, grandfather said, his deep voice carrying a mixture of sternness and fierce affection. You swore to me that if you lived as an ordinary woman, you could find a man who loved you for you, not for the Shaw name. So, you chose that mid-level middle manager with a perfectionist complex. I lowered my eyes, feeling a flush of shame. I thought his structure meant he was dedicated, Grandpa. I thought his rules meant he cared about order and building a real future together. I didn't realize it was just a cage. A cage funded by your grandfather's money, Julian added softly, setting down the fruit knife. Ethan Vance ran his company like a military drill, but he only survived because your trust fund absorbed his operational losses quietly behind the scenes. He thought he was a king, He didn't realize he was just a puppet playing in a kingdom you owned. Grandfather set his glass down with a firm thud. Enough looking back. The 3-year bet is over. You gave him his trial period, and he proved he was trash. Now, the Shaw Group needs its rightful heir. The Sterling Shaw Alliance will be formally celebrated at the annual Winter Gala this Saturday. You will step into your role as vice chairman. I looked up, looking at my scraped palms, now neatly bandaged. The soft, timid housewife who apologized for forgetting to sign a doorway sheet was dead. She had died on the cold concrete sidewalk outside Vance Enterprises, while her husband carried another woman into his car. I'm ready, Grandpa, I said, my voice cold and smooth as polished marble. And as for Vance Enterprises, let's let the open market handle them. Julian smiled, his dark eyes flashing with subtle amusement. I've already instructed our venture firm to short their stock. By Saturday night, Ethan Vance won't even have an allowance left to dock. Part 4. The Illusion Shatters. The next 3 days were a descent into hell for Ethan Vance. It started with the bank. On Thursday morning, the credit lines were formally pulled. Suppliers stopped shipments. The high-profile clients who had laughed with him outside the office building suddenly became unreachable. When he finally managed to catch one of them on the phone, the man's tone was entirely different. Vance, are you out of your mind? The client sneered. You had the heiress of the Shaw Empire as your wife, and you treated her like an underpaid intern to impress a cheap assistant? Do you think any of us want to be associated with a guy who lost the biggest safety net in the country? Good luck with your corporate house rules, buddy. You're ruined. Then came the internal collapse. With the news breaking across financial tabloids, the mood at Vance Enterprises turned toxic. The employees, whom Ethan had subjected to rigid, draconian attendance rules and constant pay deductions, realized the ship was sinking. Resignations flooded in by the hour. And then there was Chloe. Chloe had shown up at Ethan's office on Friday morning, wearing a brand new designer dress she had put on Ethan's corporate card. Ethan, honey, Chloe purred, walking in without knocking and sitting on his desk. Since that crazy woman left you, when are we moving into your penthouse? And I was thinking, as the prospective First Lady of Vance Enterprises, I shouldn't be doing secretarial work anymore. Ethan, who was staring at a sea of red numbers on his monitor, looked up at her. For the first time, without the illusion of his own absolute power, he really looked at her. Her sweet, high-pitched voice didn't sound romantic anymore. It sounded grating, obnoxious, and utterly vacuous. The dramatic fall down the steps, which he had fiercely defended, now stood out in his memory as a cheap, pathetic piece of theater. "Get off my desk," Ethan said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. Chloe blinked, taken aback. "What?" "I said, get off my desk." Ethan slammed his hands onto the wood, standing up so abruptly his chair overturned. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You ruined my marriage. You made me look like an absolute fool in front of my wife." Chloe's jaw dropped, her face twisting in outrage. "I ruined your marriage? Ethan, you were the one who docked her pay. You were the one who handed me your phone to reply to her. You treated her like a dog, and now you're blaming me. Because you egged me on." Ethan shouted, his eyes bloodshot. "You deliberately didn't log her schedule. You acted like a helpless child so I would pay attention to you. And for what? Look at this company. It's falling apart." Chloe scoffed, stepping back and crossing her arms, her sweet facade dropping entirely. "Oh, please. Don't play the victim now, Ethan. You loved feeling like a god. You loved stepping on her because you thought she was helpless. You're not mad at me. You're just mad that your little slave turned out to be the master." "Get out," Ethan choked out, his chest heaving. "You're fired, Chloe. Pack your things and get out." Chloe let out a loud, mocking laugh. "Fire me? With pleasure. By the way, the news says Vance Enterprises is going bankrupt by next week. Keep your sinking ship, Ethan. You're a pathetic loser." She spun on her high heels and slammed the door behind her, leaving Ethan standing alone in his empty, silent office. He looked at the empty desk where Chloe had sat. Then he looked at his laptop, where he used to meticulously record Rhiannon's daily violations. Rhiannon. A sudden, desperate wave of regret crashed over him, so intense it made him physically double over, gasping for air. She had cooked for him every night. She had tailored his suits by hand. She had kept the house silent when he had headaches, adjusted his ties, and smiled softly even when he scolded her for being 3 minutes late to the dinner table. She hadn't stayed because she was weak. She had stayed because she loved him. She had given him 3 years of absolute grace, enduring his ridiculous, arrogant rules, waiting for him to wake up and treat her like a human being. And he had thrown her away for a shallow parasite who left the second the money dried up. "No," Ethan whispered, his hands trembling as he straightened his tie. "No, she loves me. 3 years. She can't just throw away 3 years. She's just angry. She's doing all of this to get my attention. She wants me to chase her." He grabbed his coat. Tonight was the Shaw Grand Winter Gala. He was going to get his wife back. Part 5. The Grand Winter Gala. The grand ballroom of the St. Regis was a dazzling sea of crystal chandeliers, champagne fountains, and high society royalty. Cameras flashed endlessly near the red carpet as the country's most powerful business moguls, politicians, and celebrities arrived. I stood at the top of the grand marble staircase, looking down at the crowd. I was no longer wearing the drab, knee-length gray suits Ethan had forced me to wear to maintain a modest, professional corporate family image. Tonight, I wore a custom floor-length gown of midnight blue silk, encrusted with thousands of microscopic sapphires that caught the light with every step I took. My dark hair was swept up in an elegant vintage style, showcasing a diamond necklace from the Shaw family vault. Beside me, Julian Sterling stood in a perfectly tailored black tie tuxedo. He held out his arm to me, his gaze full of warm, quiet admiration. "You look breathtaking, Rhiannon," he murmured. "Are you ready to make your grand entry?" "More than ready," I replied, slipping my hand gracefully into the crook of his arm. As we descended the stairs together, the crowd turned. Whispers rippled through the room like a sudden breeze. "Is that Arthur Shaw's granddaughter? My God, she's stunning. I heard she was living off-grid for 3 years. Who was that foolish guy she was married to?" "Some nobody named Vance. His company is filing for Chapter 11 tonight." We reached the main floor, greeted immediately by a crowd of executives eager to pay their respects to the new vice chairman of the Shaw Group. I engaged in smooth, effortless conversation, discussing market acquisitions, real estate holdings, and portfolio expansions with a razor-sharp intellect that had been suppressed for 3 long years. Suddenly, a commotion broke out at the main entrance. "Let me in. I'm her husband. I have a right to be here." The crowd parted in surprise and disgust. Ethan Vance was standing near the velvet ropes, fighting off 2 massive security guards. His hair was disheveled, his suit rumpled, and his eyes wild with desperation. He didn't have an invitation, but he had somehow forced his way into the lobby. When his eyes swept across the ballroom and finally landed on me, he froze. The sight of me radiant, commanding, wrapped in millions of dollars of diamonds, standing shoulder to shoulder with Julian Sterling, seemed to physically strike him. He breathed, his voice breaking across the silent room. I didn't hide. I didn't flinch. I simply gestured to the security guards to let him go. "It's fine," I said smoothly, my voice carrying clearly across the quieted ballroom. "Let him in." Ethan stumbled forward, his polished shoes sliding slightly on the sleek marble floor. He stared at me, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Rhiannon, is that really you? He stammered, taking a step toward me. Look at you. Why are you dressed like this? Why didn't you tell me? Tell you what, Ethan? I asked, taking a slow, measured step forward, Julian saying right beside me like an impenetrable shield. That I was Arthur Shaw's granddaughter? Why would I? You told me you wanted a partner who earned her place. You told me my worth was based on how well I followed your rules. Ethan's face flamed red, a mixture of shame and panic twisting his features. He reached out his hand, his voice dropping into that familiar, commanding tone he used when he was trying to assert his authority. Stop this drama. Okay, I admit I was a little harsh on you this week. And Chloe. Chloe is gone. I fired her. She meant nothing to me. He took another frantic step closer. I forgive you for tricking me into signing those papers. We can fix this. You can come home tonight. I'll even raise your allowance. $5,000 a month. No, whatever you want. Just come home. A collective gasp of shock swept through the elite crowd. Did he just say, allowance? A high society matriarch whispered loudly. Is he insane? He gave a Shaw heiress an allowance. 5,000? Her necklace alone is worth 10 million. Snickers and muffled laughter began to echo through the ballroom. Ethan's face went from pale to burning crimson as he realized how ridiculous he sounded to the people whose respect he had spent his whole life trying to earn. Ethan, I said, my tone as cold and sharp as a surgeon's scalpel. You still don't get it, do you? I walked up to him, stopping just out of his reach. You didn't give me an allowance out of generosity. You gave it to me to keep me beneath you. You ran our home like a company because you were so deeply insecure that you needed a system where you could never be challenged, never be wrong, and never be held accountable. Please. Tears welled up in Ethan's eyes, real, desperate tears of a man watching his entire ego shatter into dust. I love you. I swear I love you. No, you loved the power you had over me, I corrected him gently. You loved having a wife who begged for your approval. But the moment another woman offered you a cheaper ego boost, you handed her my respect, my dignity, and my peace of mind. I stepped back, taking Julian's hand. Julian folded his fingers around mine, warm and firm. Our marriage was a 3-year probation period, Ethan, I said, looking him dead in the eye. And, just like you loved to tell me in that empty house, your time is up. Grandfather Arthur stepped forward, gesturing to the head of security. Escort this man out of my sight. And notify the press that Shaw Global has officially initiated insolvency proceedings against Vance Enterprises. No, Rhiannon. Please. Ethan screamed as the security guards grabbed his arms, dragging him backward toward the exit. Give me one more chance. 10 seconds. 3, 2, 1. Please. His pathetic countdown echoed through the grand foyer, met only by the cold, dismissive laughter of the high society crowd. The heavy oak doors slammed shut, cutting off his desperate cries forever. Part 6, The Final Deductions. 3 months later. The morning sun filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office on the top floor of the Shaw Tower. I sat at my massive glass desk, reviewing the quarterly financial reports. Julian walked in, carrying 2 cups of fresh espresso. He set one down on my desk, leaning down to press a soft, affectionate kiss onto my cheek. How are the numbers looking, Vice Chairman? He asked softly. Shaw Sterling joint ventures are up 14%, I smiled, looking up at him. And what about the liquidation of Vance Enterprises? Julian pulled an iPad from his coat pocket, tapping the screen. It concluded yesterday. The brand name was dissolved. Their physical assets were auctioned off to pay off their bank debts. Ethan Vance had to sell his penthouse, his cars, and his stock to cover the remaining liabilities. And where's he now? I asked, out of mild, detached curiosity. He leased a tiny, 1-bedroom basement apartment on the outer edge of the city, Julian said, a subtle glint of irony in his eyes. He took a mid-level manager job at a small logistics firm. But I heard from their HR department that he isn't doing well. Oh. He keeps trying to implement his corporate discipline framework on his team, Julian chuckled quietly. He tried to dock a junior staff member's pay for taking an unexcused 5-minute bathroom break. The union filed a grievance, and he was formally written up for workplace harassment. He's currently on performance probation. I let out a soft, genuine laugh, a sound free of bitterness, free of pain, filled only with the light freedom of my new life. Performance probation. How poetic. What about Chloe? I asked. She tried to sue Ethan for wrongful termination, Julian replied, setting his iPad down. When she realized he was completely broke, she dropped the suit and tried to apply for jobs at other firms. But with her reputation ruined by the tabloid scandal, no top-tier company will touch her. Last I heard, she was working as a temp at a call center. I nodded slowly, closing the file on my desk. The ghosts of my past were finally laid to rest, paid in full by their own arrogance. Julian walked behind my chair, resting his hands gently on my shoulders, massaging the light tension in my neck. Any regrets, Ree? He asked softly near my ear. I leaned back against his chest, looking out at the sprawling, magnificent skyline of the city, a city where I was no longer a hidden, docked housewife, but a leader writing her own destiny. Only one, I said, turning my head to smile up at him. What's that? That I didn't fire him sooner. Julian laughed, his arms wrapping around me, holding me tight in a warm, effortless embrace built on real love, real equality, and a future without any rules, except the ones we chose to write together.